panel represents a range of caregiving experiences and decades of knowledge of the daily challenges of living with Parkinson's. I know that you'll find it informative, and I want to encourage you to ask any questions you have, to share anything you would like to share for the Zoom chat. We'll send everyone a transcript of the chat following the event. And thank you all for joining us. To start, I would love for each of you to take a brief background on your Parkinson's Care Partners story. And Alex, we'll just go alphabetically. I'm going to ask you to start for us.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Hi, I'm Alexandra Shin, but also known as Alex. And I have a couple of experiences. One is that I was primary, I'll say, overseer of the care of my father some time ago when he had dementia and I'm pretty sure Parkinsonism. He had a mask-like face. He was unable to walk. He had gastrointestinal problems. He had a tremor. You know, we think he probably had Parkinsonism as well, although he wasn't treated for that. So I oversaw his care for a number of years. And currently, my husband has Parkinsonism. And I've actually been his care partner for probably about 25 years of off and on illnesses, although Parkinsonism is the latest one. He's not very far along in it, but he has other comorbidities, if you will, or other health conditions that probably make it a little more challenging. So I am a spouse to someone with a Parkinson's related disease, and I was an adult child to someone with a Parkinson's related disease as well.
Thank you, Alex. Charles, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. My name's Charles. I was a caregiver for my dad in sort of a mixed fashion. I moved to Los Angeles from Colorado in 2006, the same year he was diagnosed. And the first several years, there were no real symptoms. And in 2014, 2015, that's when we really started seeing evidence of the decline. And so I would come back home a couple of times a year to try and help my mom and my dad sort of navigate the process, see what I was seeing, help them as best as possible before coming back. That's when I identified, big issues with hydration and safety issues regarding carpet and furniture. And in 2020, at the onset of the pandemic, while my parents were living through a very trying situation where they were forced out of their condo unit due to a big insurance issue and some damages, I and my girlfriend, who herself was a caregiver for her mom with Parkinson's, we moved back to Colorado to become full-time 24/7 caregivers. And it was only made possible because of the pandemic. So it was a bit of a silver lining in a certain regard, being able to get my dad back home together with my mom and go through the last several months with him, keeping his quality of life as high as possible. And we're now back in Los Angeles, and now my primary goal is to try and convey as much information and assistance as I can to those who need it, because obviously this is a very challenging situation to be in as a caregiver.
Nessa?
Hi, I'm Nessa Weinman, and I see some of my friends up there who come to support groups. My husband, who I've been married to for 32 years, was diagnosed 22 years ago, 10 years into our marriage. Just right on my 36th birthday and his to come, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. At the time, we had kids ages 2, 6, and 8. So their whole life has been with Parkinson's. We've handicapped accessible to our house. And I'm also a support group leader, and I've worked for Parkinson's organizations. And I've been in it a long time, 22 years. What can I say?
You're going to say a lot. And I do also want to say Charles also runs a support group. He started a support group for adult children of PD, and we're sort of morphing that now into another caregiver support group that's going to be a weekly support group as well. So Nessa's going to lead our first in-person group starting in September again. So we're trying to really help through support groups, trying to help the care partners that are out there that are just feeling so overwhelmed. So let's start with our first question. Please share 2 resources for Parkinson's caregiving. What are the 2 things you would encourage every care partner to seek out? So let's see, whoever wants to start, if you have a moment, you have it on the tip of your tongue.
I'll go ahead and start. I'll start off with this. It's a link to a Google Doc that I created of tools and resources that we've used and have found beneficial. Some of which we very much got our hands on, some of which we found a little bit too late. But please, by all means, feel free to use this document and browse around. There's things specific to Los Angeles, but the information you can garner from that is that even though it's Los Angeles specific, no matter where you live, your local departments of disability and aging may have resources for you. So please look into those. Further, there's just a myriad of things that are available to help you along the way that are all in there, from cups and traveling tools and you name it. There's a lot of stuff. And it can be a little overwhelming, but take that link, copy it, bookmark it, and it's there for you. I add to it regularly whenever someone tells me something that's worked for them. One of the things that I really like in there is an app and website called Medscape that gives you direct access to basically all of the medicines and treatments that are legal and used in the United States. It's a great boon of information about the disease itself, but also all of the medications and treatments that you may have questions about. And one of the perks is that built into it is a contraindication system where you can actually input all of your loved one's medications and see if there are any indications. That means if you want to try and give them some cold medicine, you can check and see what the interaction may be. Maybe there's a new prescription that you got from the primary care provider, as opposed to the movement disorder specialist. That'll give you an option to see if there's any problems, because there are frequently unintended contraindications provided from doctors who are not Parkinson's specific. And that can come from anywhere, from gastroenterologists at times, primary care providers, or otherwise. So it's a really valuable resource. And aside from that, there's just tons of things that I could go on about for hours and hours and hours, but I'll go ahead and accede to one of these other lovely ladies.
Okay, Alex, I noticed you had your hand up. Why don't you go next?
I would strongly recommend that you find a good support group for caregivers. My husband and I have attended Judy's group, which is for people with Parkinson's as well as their caregivers. And that has been very, very helpful. The only reason we're not attending at the moment is just a scheduling problem for me. But it has been, and I'm sure continues to be, enormously helpful in terms of resources as well as just a sense of support from other people. But I also want to specify that for caregivers, you need a group specific to you, a group where your person with Parkinson's is not in attendance with you, because you really need to have a place to talk about the hard stuff that you don't want your loved one hearing, such as when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're grief-stricken, when you are just fed up, when you are overwhelmed. You need a place where you can talk about that. So I really recommend that you find that kind of support group as well. So information is great, but also a place where you can really let loose, in a sense, where it feels safe to let loose with other care partners. I also think it's very important to find some kind of activity for yourself, like getting outdoors, some kind of physical activity. You don't have to be an athlete, you don't have to be a jogger or anything like that, but a way to break away and relax for a bit. I know that for myself, I'll take a walk for 15 minutes at the end of the day. And just to get outside in some fresh air. Now that it's hot, I'll wait till 8 o'clock at night. And so find something that is really good for you alone as well.
That's great advice. Nessa, what would you like to add here? I know you have.
I agree with both of you guys, and some of the stuff I had written down, you've already said. But I think that being educated about Parkinson's is a really good idea. The first 5 years of my husband's disease, he was in denial. So he didn't read anything. So I read all, and I learned everything about it, so that when something happened to him or some new symptom popped up or whatever, you kind of know whether it was Parkinson's or old age or just anybody could have, that could happen to anybody. I think the Davis Finney Foundation has a really good book. If you want to only have one book, the Victory Challenge that they put out is a very good primer of everything on Parkinson's. PCLA is great for education, and I've always been aligned with organizations with Parkinson's for many years, and education is really key. And then I really agree with Alex about having support. Sometimes you can't wait till there's a caregiver support group. So I call one of my caregiver friends, and they are the ones that understand what's going on. My sister, my brother, no, they don't get it. They totally don't get it. So and it doesn't have to be another Parkinson's caregiver, just a caregiver who understands and is compassionate and kind. So I have like 3 or 4 different phone numbers of people that I call, and I think that's been super helpful. And I'll just add one thing to Alex's thing about having some kind of a hobby or whatever for yourself. Since I have to be home a lot with Mike, so I do gardening because I can do that at home, and baking because I can do that at home, as long as I don't eat everything that I bake.
Thanks, Nessa. Yeah, I think that these are all really great suggestions. It's just taking a minute to see what can work best for you. I know somebody mentioned being overwhelmed. I think, Alex, you were kind of saying that, and I know we have all felt that as care partners, that there's just a day where you feel like, I can't breathe. What do I do? So let me ask you, what do you do when you have that moment of feeling like you're going to explode? You can't take one more minute. You don't know what you're going to do. How are you ever going to get out of this? Anyone that wants to chime in here?
I think there's a couple of ways to address that, and we want to obviously try and control ourselves so that we're always doing the best option in terms of letting it out, because it can be very easy for us caregivers to get into bad habits when hardships arise. I know that for me and my mom in particular, we both got into some bad habits of drinking probably a little bit heavier than we probably should have, which didn't necessarily help things sometimes. And so that's where understanding that it is okay for you to, whenever necessary, step back, step into another room, step out of the house, and take a deep breath and compose yourself. Whatever kind of mode you need to take to get out of that situation and give yourself a breather is huge. And you should try, as hard as it always is, to not feel guilty about giving yourself these breaks and this time and this space, because we need to really in order to provide the best care possible, we need to ensure that we are the best individuals ourselves. And that means making sure that our mental health is as good as possible and that we're in as good a place as possible to provide this, oftentimes very, very sophisticated care. So knowing that you can do all these things to step away and take breathers, and that whatever option you choose, to try and make it the healthiest one, whether it's taking a walk or just sitting and listening to music or having a cry, whatever it ends up being, to express your emotions and to get over those feelings, and try to not hold any guilt about it. Just try to know that you're doing your best, you're doing everything you can out of love, which shows an enormous heart that a lot of people don't have and don't understand in terms of the situation that you're in. So be honest and truthful with yourself, but be forgiving and take the breaks that are needed when you need them.
That's great, Charles. I do want to touch on one thing. You were initially out of town. You were not living in the same city. Was there still a moment of feeling overwhelmed when you were away, or does that really come into play when you actually moved back? Did you still have those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, it was always anxiety inducing a little bit, trying to talk to my mom and help them navigate things when they encountered, whether it was the latest fall issue or hallucination or UTI, what have you. But it was always sort of, I mean, as we all know that it's kind of a constant state of grief that we're in. We're always sort of grieving the loss of our loved one as we watch the decline occur. And I had those in sort of weird bursts for a while. It was 6 months. I'd be there for 2 or 3 weeks and I'd be fully in it. And then I'd be leaving and I'd be devastated on my way to the airport, trying to just grieve what happened and knowing that when I come back in 6 further months, it was going to be that much worse. And so it was a staccato sort of style of grief, like 6 months here, 6 months here, 6 months here, with sort of bits of anxiety in the middle, just wondering, how can I help my mom? Are they really doing okay? Or is she being honest, or is she kind of overwhelmed? And then when we started the in-person caregiving during the pandemic, it was what I'm sure all of us are dealing with. And every night that you're putting them to bed, you're kind of grieving. You're having that small state of grief, and that also sort of couples with a bit of relief, like, okay, they're in bed, I can kind of relax now, but what's happening? What's the next step? What's tomorrow going to bring? And it's always sort of a constant, continuous, slow evolution of grief as we go along. That's really challenging to deal with. That's a whole other element of being a caregiver that, like Nessa mentioned, that other people generally don't really understand unless they're in this situation of providing that kind of intensive care.
That's right. Thank you. Alex, you want to?
I want to really second what Charles just mentioned about stepping outside of the room or stepping outdoors. You can get to a point where you're feeling like you're really about to explode or say something that you just don't think is a good idea to say. And you have to come to a place where you realize it is really okay to stop what I'm doing in this moment, as long as the person is safe, and walk outside or walk into another room and just breathe. And learn some breathing exercises. There are just simple breathing exercises that you can do to help yourself calm down. The out breath should be a little bit longer than the in breath, because it's the out breath that's more calming. So I think it's really important to take those moments. What I also do for myself, and I'm a meditator, so these things come naturally to me, but I think that really, even if you're not, it's very easy to just stop, walk away, and breathe. But what I also do for myself is I'll schedule some time away. And that might mean scheduling 4 hours away. It might mean a whole day. My husband can more or less be okay by himself for very short periods of time, which includes me even going away overnight. Mm-hmm. And you have to get to the place where you allow yourself to do that. as long as your loved one is still ambulatory and able to do things that will keep him or her safe. And when I can schedule something like that for myself, I might not be able to do that at the spur of the moment, but if I can schedule that for like a week or 2 weeks down the road, I've got something to look forward to, and I've got something to plan for.
Right.
And that's very helpful as well.
That's great advice. Nessa?
Well, okay, things that I did not hear other people say.
I know you've done everything that they both did.
So one of the things that I'll do, first of all, I'm a very emotional person, so I always cry. I cry a lot. And my husband's just used to it by now. I mean, but and it's also because I'm always so close to the edge of stress, because my husband almost falls many times a day, almost. And if you ask him if he falls, he'd say, no, I don't fall. But one thing is that I do that makes me feel better is I look for the gratitude. So I already know it's really hard, but I also know that I'm really blessed to have, certain things in my life and certain people in my life. And one thing that my husband does is he does a gratitude list every night where he just writes like 5 things down. That can really turn you around. The other thing for me, being a caregiver, is that when I do something nice to help somebody else, it also makes me feel better. So if I'm cooking soup, I'm usually bringing it to, my friend over here and my mom and whatever. Just and volunteering, being a support group leader. I don't always want to do it, but when I'm done, I feel so good. So I think that, really, I think is trying to find what you can still be grateful for. And one things that you both guys kind of hit on, and that Judy and I have this kind of saying that we've been saying over the years, every time a new symptom or something happens, we call it a new normal, where you grieve, like, now he's in a walker, or now he's in a wheelchair, or now he can't swallow great, or whatever. So you take the time and you grieve it, and then you accept it, and you accept it as your new normal, because you don't want to continue to grieve it, because Parkinson's is a progressive disease. So I think finding the gratitude, meditation, everything else everybody else said.
I want to add one little thing in here too that has helped me immensely when we talk about gratitude, because sometimes it's really hard to find something to be grateful for. But I love the idea of writing it down. I try to write down 5 things that I'm grateful for every day. And it could be in those moments when things were so intense. It could have been, I'm just grateful that my pinky is still moving and that I can still talk and I had time to brush my teeth. Or, it can be the most basic, silly things that we think are silly, but it allows us to, if you write it and you put it on paper, it seems to absorb so much better. So I think that can be really helpful. We have a question in here from someone in the group, and they wrote, when you see that your loved one is no longer capable of a task, in this case, one requiring a combination of executive function and fine motor skills, how do you talk to them about it without crushing their ego? This is a great question. Whoever asked it, wonderful question. Okay, I'll open it up. Who would like to?
What works best is if you can somehow make it their idea. Okay, so when my husband needed to use a walker, and nobody wants to use a walker when you're not using one, but with some of the things I also would say was, can you do it for me? Can you do it for me? Can you try it for me for 3 days and see how it goes? Because it will make my life easier. So, but also, like, if you can somehow talk about it, like my husband gave up driving on his own, but we had kind of talked about it. If there's some ways that you can use conversation and get them to try something and then let them think it's their idea. That's the best thing.
There's a great movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the wife is saying the man's the head, but the wife is the neck, you know. And I think I always loved that because as a care partner, we have to be the neck. We are coordinating everything. So, anyone else, Alex or Charles, you want to add to that?
I think what she mentioned about making things a favor to you is very beneficial. They never want to be a burden, and so making them seem helpful with the activity, even though it's not doing an activity, it really helps them feel like they're a part of the whole process. You know, making sure that they have their dignity, that it's sort of their decision, that they're being helpful, and if necessary, you know, this conversation often comes up with driving. It's one of the biggest ones to come up in this sort of form. Making sure that they understand that it's a safety issue, not just for them, but for anyone else on the road. You know, it's hey, you just caught yourself falling there. Like, do you really think that you can slam on the brakes at 65 miles an hour? You know, you have these issues, and helping to sort of draw a connection between the behavior that they know is happening and what the realities of driving are in some of those aspects. And the only other thing to do is just try and make sure that you're not being dictatorial about it. Make sure that they're a part and parcel of the decision and the whys, and that way they help maintain their own dignity. You know, same thing with like water absorbent underwear, using that phrase instead of diaper, making sure that they still feel like the adult that they are, and we're not, you know, babying them too much, not coddling them. They're still an adult and still valuable, and that's sort of the idea to get across, I think.
That was great. How about you, Alex? Anything?
I was lucky enough that my husband gave up driving on his own, so that was really nice. But I have used the Do It For Me when it came to using a walker.
Mhm.
And it was, you know, it makes me very anxious. I don't want to see you fall. Why don't you try it for me for a few days? I did the same thing. And I think that really is a very effective way to go.
It's a great tool.
And I think sometimes you have to be the bad guy. There are going to be times where you have to be the bad guy. There's going to be time, for example, sometimes my husband doesn't want to take the walker when we're going to go out for dinner or something like that. Or if we don't know what the situation is going to be, oh no, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. If I'm feeling very strongly that I'm going to be having to hold on to him the whole time, catching him forwards, catching him backwards, or side to side, sometimes I just put my foot down and I say, I'm not comfortable, you know, in this situation without, you know, you having that. I don't want to be the one grabbing you all the time. And I'm not going to go if we don't take the walker. I mean, sometimes you have to be mean and it's horrible, but sometimes you have to lay down the law.
You know, I think this brings up a good point. You know, one of my next questions was going to be, you know, what kinds of things have you used or have you done to make your loved ones safe, either at home or when you're out and about? And I think safety is a big issue here when we're talking about using walkers. If you have to go in a wheelchair for a trip or something, I think it really becomes a big issue. And let's talk a little bit about safety for a minute here, and because I think we're sort of segueing into that. You know, Nessa, you were concerned if you go to a restaurant and Mike falls, then how are you going to get him up? You know, that it's uncomfortable, and it's also embarrassing for people. I do want to say that if you have a loved one that has a lot of falls, I've known many people that have worn knee pads and elbow pads, and they wear them under their pants and their shirts. And it can really help protect injuries to do that. So that's just like a bit of something, a bit of assistive device that maybe would work for you if they absolutely refuse to use a walker, but they really need it. So let's talk about safety. Charles, I know Safe Nessa has done a lot at her house. You really took it upon yourself to make your father safe. What are some of the things that you did?
Um, the list is long, but I'll try and be as succinct as possible. Knowing that when I first saw his festinating gait issues, I knew that tripping was going to be a problem. So we were obligated, because my mom and dad had a vinyl floor, that removing the floor rugs was going to be big. He wasn't going to be able to lift up his feet over those things. Another thing I noticed was he was having difficulty turning around in small spaces. He would freeze in these areas where, you know, he might be going to go for the phone, but now he has to try and turn back around. And in the narrow spaces, their visual fields seems to help cause the freeze. They suddenly see something in the corner of their eyes and they just stop. So pushing furniture away and making sure that you really have a lot of space available. This is sort of counterintuitive to a lot of our desires that we've acquired over the years of making things look aesthetically pleasing, having things centered in rooms and whatnot. So you sometimes have to make the sacrifice for appearance and push things to the perimeter just so you have enough space in all the right places. And from there, obviously walkers can be hard to get them to use initially, but you can have companies install grab bars. Call Before You Fall is a local California company. They'll put grab bars and ramps and elevators or anything that you can imagine anywhere that you need them. Putting them next to windows, if they like going to a particular window to look out, having them next to the fridge, next to the sink. There are drop down bars that you can install next to toilets so they don't fall off a toilet if it's open on one side. There's just so many of those types of things available, and Medicare generally will help you cover a lot of those initial costs as well. And from there, if your loved one's in an advanced stage, there are tools like Hoyer lifts and sit to stand assist lifts that will enable you to safely transfer your loved one from the bed to a chair, lift them from the ground if possible. And they're bulky and take up space, but they are fairly easy to use. So if you're the lone caregiver in the space and you're having issues with regular falls, if you don't feel comfortable having to always call for lift assists from 911, you have these tools that you can utilize to help make the process a little bit easier for you and save your back in terms of having to, you know, constantly bend over awkwardly and help them by the shoulder and whatnot.
That's great. Nessa, I know you took action at your house as well.
I think one thing is toileting and how messy that can be. And so one thing that's an easy fix is to put a riser on the bottom of your toilet so that it's higher. That's an easy fix that is really important actually. So they don't have to go down as low to sit, makes it much easier to get up. And I also have the bars next to the toilets and stuff. If you have stairs in the front of your house, in the back of the house, inside your house, you have to have rails. You have to, if you have stairs, you have to have rails. One other thing I think about a bathroom is that there's a kind of hinge you can put on the door that will make the bathroom door open up so that it's wider, that make it easier for a walker, for sure a wheelchair needs to get into the bathroom. And that's again, another kind of easy fix. But I think also the other thing that you can do is have an occupational therapist come out to your house, and you can say, he falls a lot around this area, or she falls here, you know, all the time, or whatever. How do we get in bed? How do we get out of bed without falling and rolling, whatever? So an occupational therapist can also come and work with you and your Parkinson's person. That's going to get into. Look, I spent the money on making my house handicapped accessible because I'd rather spend the money on making my house handicap accessible than spending the money in a hospital for when he breaks a limb or a hip or whatever.
Or hits his head, you know, there's just so
it's his head.
Yeah. And the thing is that there really are a lot of tools out there available to help us as caregivers. There's some that are in that link that I initially posted. You can find a lot in the general disability community, whether it's hanging a chain triangle over the bed so that they can pull themselves up or otherwise. There are seats that you can have installed in your car that will actually slide out the door and pivot around to make standing up easier. That's something that we wish we had discovered earlier, because my dad had several falls with my mom getting in and out of the car. Mm-hmm. So if you're not sure, the resource probably exists somewhere. There really are tools for just about anything and everything. I learned a lot of these tools from the Abilities Expo, which is a disability expo that travels around every year. And the other thing is, feel free to be creative. You may think of something that is not for its intended use, but works. For example, in my industry that I've worked in, we use a lot of brightly colored tape. And we found that using that to provide a guide mark, a little T mark for where he is supposed to stand to sit down in his chair, it gave him a visual cue to line up on so that he could actually stand in the right place and make sitting down a little easier. So feel free to think out of the box a little bit and think, hey, this is what my problem is. What can I use to mitigate it? Whether it's just buying some foam from Home Depot and some pipe foam from the plumbing area and putting those around the edges of the tables and such. There's a lot of things that you can do that are unique that you'd be surprised can be very helpful.
That's a great suggestion. I know that for some people too, if you have long hallways, having bars installed down the hallway, it just makes it easier for them to maneuver through the house. Anything that you can do to make your loved ones safer is really the ultimate goal here. Alex, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, I did actually. In terms of not just physical safety, walking around the house or getting around the house, but I purchased for my husband one of those alarm systems so that he wears a pendant around his neck. And if he falls and I'm not home, he presses a button and, there's someone that comes out on a speaker and talks to him. And if they can't reach him, they're going to try and reach me first. And if they can't reach me, I gave them the phone number of our neighbor who has a key to our house and who is always home, as a second person to reach, and ultimately they would send the paramedics. So I think getting one of those alarm systems, personal alarm systems, is another thing to consider if you leave the house a lot, because I work part-time still. So I'm not home every hour of the day, and I can't be. So I would do that as well. Also, we have a shower chair in the shower, which just makes it a whole lot easier for him to shower himself, which he can still do. And we have steps in front of the house. There are just a couple of steps. And yes, we put in a rail for that, but I also made the steps deeper. And what I mean by that is, instead of being like 12 inches or whatever it is to put your foot, they're like, I don't know, 24 or more inches, so that actually the walker can sit on the step with him.
That's a great idea.
I found that it was too short. It was too small a space to put your foot. So we went even further. And made it really a very, like a plateau, like two plateaus instead.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I love that. We also put in a ramp at our house. We had 2 steps to get up to our porch, which we had a railing installed there, and another short railing for the 2 steps coming into the house. But eventually, when Sandy had to be with a wheelchair and also even with his walker, I had a ramp installed. And I think that it's, and I'm one of those people that worries about aesthetics. I am being honest about that one. For me, it took me a long time to get those railings up and a long time to get that ramp up. but it just made life so much easier. And I think that's the thing you have to look at is it's not necessarily for them. Sometimes, again, this is for us. This is what we need to do to help us as a care partner. It gives us it empowers us. We have a great question here from Lisa. Is it true that you can call the paramedics just to help get somebody off the floor who has fallen? Not a life-threatening emergency, you just need assistance in getting somebody back on their feet. And the answer is yes. Has anyone done that?
Yeah, you can call, you call for a lift assist. That's literally what you tell them, and they'll help ensure that you get the paramedics over there and it doesn't turn into a big emergency kind of an issue.
Right.
And sort of related to that and what Alex was talking about is you have the life alert systems that you can have like sort of a monthly subscription where, you know, the pendant avenue. There are also more contemporary options that you can look into with like Apple watches or Samsung watches that have similar things that can be built in to facilitate that kind of issue. But also going back to what I had mentioned earlier in terms of your local municipalities having departments of disability and aging, for example, the Los Angeles County Department of Aging has its own free system called LA EARS, that is the emergency alert response system. It's a free version of Life Alert. You just call them up and find out that it's available, and they'll get you set up. But it's depending on, no matter where you live, at least look into your departments of aging to see what services they may have that can be beneficial. Because like with Los Angeles, they have the fall response system built in, you know, accessible for free. So be sure that you look everywhere you possibly can. Just delve into the depths of finding those resources no matter where you are.
Right. And the other thing with that, Charles, is that you know, they don't come with sirens and all of that. You still call 911, but you just say this is a non-emergency lift assist. And it doesn't make them feel like there's all this hoopla going around it. You know, it can be very, very easy to work it through. So
I've also found that when Mike falls, sometimes if you just let him sit for a minute, gather his wits about himself, that he can usually get up by himself, you know, if he hasn't like really hurt himself. So, but not to try right away, because then he'll just fall again. Right. But if you can really just say, okay, let's just sit, let's take it, let's do some breathing, let's wait a minute. Then he can get on all fours and then find something to put his hands on and pull himself up. It's just not freaking out and trying to get him up right away.
Right. You know, the other thing I want to say, you know, when we think about the Los Angeles Department of Aging, we think of people over 65, but you may have someone that's a young onset person that's in their 50s or even in their 40s. If that's the case, you still are eligible for the services that are done through this LA Department of Aging because it is an accessibility factor. So that's part of that, I think, too. I just want to say for us as caregivers, we have to learn to accept that accessibility is part of our lives as well. And I don't know if any of you had issues with that going into it, but, you know, anyone want to comment, not comment, or just we'll move on.
I can show some of my favorite devices.
So Nessa has devices, tips and tricks. Okay, Nessa. Okay.
Not to continually bag on my husband, but he does spill a lot. So this is called Mighty Mug, and it's themightymug.com. It's got this rubber on the bottom, and it suctions to the table, so it won't go forwards or backwards. You have to lift it straight up to drink it. It comes also in a coffee mug. So you see, this is they're really great.
Is there a lid on the coffee mug? Or
no, so I've kind of let go of lids because they never work great and they're hard to clean and they break a lot. So, but if everything doesn't totally spill, you know, that's a good thing. The other thing I have is Mike likes to have a glass of wine at night. And so I have these really short wine glasses, no stem, no glass, falls on the floor, doesn't break. And it's much easier for a person with Parkinson's who can't move their neck as much to drink from. And then my other favorite is these little drink things. This one says, positivity is powerful, but it's the kind, it's stainless steel inside and it keeps cold, and the straw, it falls on the floor, it doesn't spill. And I got these from, it's kind of like an women's accessory company called Bando, BAN.DO.com. Bando, but these are really good. But you also have to have a straw cleaner too, because you got to clean out the insides of the straws, because otherwise bacteria and stuff gets in there. Really not good for your Parkinson's person. And then the other thing is, like, Mike likes straws and everything, so good for the environment. We have these stainless steel ones that you can get on Amazon anywhere, really. Oh wait, that in the chat, Sarah, it's BAN.DO.com.
That's what she put in. She did it. But
I think an extra dot in there, or you can just Google Bando. So I've cleaned up a lot of spills. now I don't clean up so many because this is really good.
That's great. I think it's, important to recognize that those things are just going to happen. And how do you react? Okay, I think this is an important thing to touch base on. Reaction when something gets broken, a glass gets spilled, how do you react with that? What do you tell yourself so that you don't go berserk or get really upset, or now I have to clean something more up, how do you navigate that?
You try to make it not a big deal. Sometimes if you're really stressed out, you're gonna probably get mad, but most of the time you're just like, no big deal. What I do is I go and I grab a towel right away, and I put a towel down on the spill, and then I'll Swiffer mop it afterwards. Try and make it like, who cares, no big deal. But if you do flip, sometimes you do, you just have to go back and say you're sorry later.
And don't hold yourself account. Don't forgive yourself if you do lose your cool. It's going to happen. The stress level builds up. You're going to kind of lose your cool. But don't beat yourself up over it. One thing that we used that we found helpful for things like spills in particular was Costco sells these 52 packs of white towels that you can either choose to wash, or you have enough of them that you can just throw them away. Mm-hmm. And honestly, just having enough towels that you don't care about them, you just throw it on the ground, rub your foot on it, toss it away, so you're not adding more laundry to your list or whatever. But being willing and able to just sort of discard some of those things, and having some cheap towels around can really be beneficial, because then you don't care about it. It's not one of your nice towels. It's almost like just sort of a slightly more expensive paper towel that you just can discard if necessary, or feel free to wash.
And I find that spills just really don't faze me much, but I think what helps is that my husband typically feels so bad about it that when I look at him and how embarrassed he feels or how sorry he feels, there's no way in the world that I'm gonna get angry at that. So I think looking at that probably saves me from really having much of a reaction, other than don't worry about it, it's nothing.
Right.
I also use humor a lot to diffuse a otherwise stressful situation. Like maybe I'll spill something and then we'll make a joke. That's my job, and not your job or whatever. So we try to use humor a lot.
Yeah, I'm along that same way. If I hear something fall, I'll yell out timber, and then you're sort of good to go. Keep the mood light, keep yourself light. Also, if necessary, a tool that becomes very useful in the later stages, but maybe useful at earlier stages, are called chucks. They're typically a hospital device, but they're for spills, oftentimes urine, if underneath the patient who's laying down or seated in their chair. But they're fairly inexpensive to get, and if you could lay a few of those down in the spill area, that can also be another way to just sort of preemptively deal with spills if they become a regular issue. If you don't find chucks readily available from Walgreens or a medical supply store, just using a regular beach towel or something. But go ahead and it's hard to sometimes think logistically, but if this is a regular problem, find a new way to sort of address it so that it doesn't become an issue on a regular basis for yourself.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that one. Okay, I am going to open it up now too. If anyone else has questions, if you want to put it in the chat, we're open to having some of your questions. But there is another topic that I do want to talk about because I think we're going into summer and we're coming off of this pandemic, 2.5 years of being cooped up, and people are feeling like they want to travel, but many people with PD feel like they cannot travel. So just wondering if any of you have experience with this.
We've just gotten back from 2 trips. We went to Kauai. What I do when I travel is I get a handicap accessible room, and I call back and make sure that they have the handicap accessible room for me. It just makes a big difference. The airports are really hard. Get a wheelchair or use a walker. The other thing is I don't plan too much in our days. So there may be like 1 activity a day or 2 activities a day with time for rest in between. Not like, when we were young and we could sightsee everywhere. And someone told me this once. So Mike can't help me get the suitcases or whatever. He's using the walker. So I may be juggling a lot of things. And one of my friends told me one time, and I don't mean this in a religious way, that there are angels out there who will come and help you. And it's true. I've been places where I've been struggling with a couple suitcases and someone will come up and say, can I help you? Or I've been pushing Mike in a wheelchair if he's been hurt or whatever. And I'm going uphill in Boston on a trip, and some guy I don't know who could be Republican and totally different from me in 5 million different ways, but he offers to take a turn with the wheelchair. Right. That kindness does exist out there.
And it really does. And I would like to make the point too that travel doesn't even necessarily mean a vacation. A lot of us may be a little embarrassed to take our loved ones out and about to do things that we used to do. And what we found with my mom and my dad is helping them go out on just regular things, going to a restaurant, going to a museum, going to the zoo, to the botanic gardens. Doing small, simple little trips can be good for your mental health and well-being for you and the patient to get something a little different. And a lot of the planning is the same. Like there are still angels out there who will help you with doors, but make sure you have everything that you possibly need. Make sure you have your daily meds. Have a couple of water bottles to drink with. If you need to fully pack up a backpack. Another issue that comes up when we're going out and about is bathrooms. Well, they make portable urinals for both male and female patients that no matter if it's your husband, your wife, your mother, father, you have a portable urinal device to help make sure that you can go out and about. And in conjunction with this, I would say, even though it can feel a little unnerving, sometimes feel maybe stared at, you deserve and are entitled to your space in public. So take ownership of it, no matter how much space you need. Even if you're at, down the street at the Chipotle and you have to take up 3 tables, 1 table for your backpack, 1 table for their walker, and then the other table you're eating at. Take all of that space. And if you or him both spill your sodas, the people there generally are understanding enough to be completely content with bringing out a mop and helping. But own your space, feel comfortable. And honestly, if you need to take your loved one into the women's bathroom, or you need to go into the men's bathroom, whatever option, you are more than all right to do. Don't ever feel like you can't ever do that, especially if it's the easiest way to deal with things at the time. It can feel awkward, especially if someone makes a snide remark. Feel free to yell at them. Like, honestly, you are entitled to what you need to do when it comes to bathroom time and your space in public, and trying to enjoy yourself. And being able to go out and enjoy restaurants or the zoo and do things you did helps you a lot feel normal again. You can sort of take a small step away, even though you're fully immersed in the Parkinson's caregiver process. Still, you're at least able to go do some things and have some fun, and see a ball game or something. But feel free to take ownership of that space and do what you need to do, and use the resources and tools that are there so that you can do that.
That's great advice, Charles. We have something in the chat, and I know we're getting short on time, but I do want to read this because I think it's a really good one. My husband was diagnosed 5 years, but is now progressing and still self-sufficient, but incremental changes are still upsetting. Support resources tend to focus on people much further along, which is overwhelming and distressing. Any general thoughts for those early in this journey, and how to get support without getting overwhelmed by what is coming with the disease? Anyone want to?
My first caregiver group I went to, I came home in tears. It was awful because I was totally young. 30, maybe I went about before I was 40, and they were all older, and it was overwhelming. So you have to find the right group of people, because I've been in other caregiver groups that have been just fine. A lot of times it depends on the moderator too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it can be really overwhelming when you're new and you see things. One thing to keep in mind is that everybody is different. You've seen one person with Parkinson's, you've seen one person with Parkinson's. So just because my husband is in a walker and whatever he's doing, he's had it for 22 years now, it doesn't mean that your person is going to have the same path. Some people get dementia or cognitive issues and some don't. Some get dyskinesias and some don't. It's very unique to the person. So if you can keep that in mind as a new person, I think that could be helpful. But also you got to find the right group.
I agree with that, Nessa. I think it's somebody just wrote in here, LA is such a large city. Can't PCLA try to put together a group for those of us who are dealing with the early stages? I completely identify with James. And you know what, Lisa, that's a great suggestion. I appreciate that. And we will start looking at that, because that's how we created our women's only group and our men's group. And we're always listening to hear what the community wants. And I think it's really important to know that we're here for you. PCLA, we have recently sent out, started something new, a care partner support network that we are doing. That's not what we're calling it, but Sarah can remind me of what we haven't come up with a finalized name for it. But basically, Sandy Rodney, who is Radner is a wonderful care partner that took amazing care of her husband, and like Charles, resource based. I mean, she knows a lot, and she is going to work with you to help put you in contact with another peer care partner, someone who's been through it, who may be able to help you. And this idea of being early on, and you aren't going through all the changes, you aren't seeing that many things. For Sandy's first 13 years of having Parkinson's, no one knew he had it. It just wasn't that visible. So you have to learn to find people, surround yourself with people that understand what some of these changes are going to be like, and know that just because you see someone who's 50 years old in a wheelchair, it does not mean that your partner is going to be in a wheelchair, even if they've had it for 10 or 12 years. It's just not the same. It is a boutique disease. So that's our takeaway, is that each person is so unique, and you never know what you're going to get. And, even remember that because they're having a day that's really bad today, it doesn't mean that tomorrow is going to be really bad. It could be a really good day. And that's just Parkinson's, that's why we always talk about these gratitude lists, because you may have that really amazing day. And I see that Sarah put in PCLA's Care Partner Support Network. We're trying to get this off the ground. It's been really slow going, but we're making progress with it. And we hope that if you are interested in getting involved with it, that you will contact us and let us know. And I think maybe having a support group that will address issues for people that have not had it very long or not asymptomatic, and how can we help support you in that way. Nessa, Alex, Charles, I can't thank you guys enough. You're our power people here with this organization. It really makes such a difference for us to have you involved and be willing to share all of your ideas and what you've done. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsors for Let's Talk. And we will see. They are, let's do the sponsors first. Abbott, AbbVie, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and also by you. But I do want to mention that PCLA is planning some wonderful events this month. On June 26th, we're doing our first in-person Sunday in the Park with PCLA at Pan Pacific Park. We're very excited. It's from 3 to 5. It's going to be fun, popsicles, ice cream, really low key, just a place for people that have been on Zoom for 2 years and have never met people in person. They'll get a chance to meet them, and we're excited about that. So I hope that you will join us. Sarah can add you to our list, and you'll get a little more information about it as the month goes on. Let's see. Anything else that I have to address? We thank our sponsors and also Care Partner Support Groups from PCLA. Wednesday, July 6th, 11 a.m. to 12:30. Care Partner Cafe with Juanita Thompson. Juanita is a licensed social worker. Our Tuesday evening care partners are Charles Scheel, and Charles does his every week. Sorry for butchering the last name, Charles.
No worries.
That's from 7:30 to 8:30 Pacific time. And you can see the information that he has is so vital and so great. And I hope that you will join him in one of his support groups, because he's really got so much information. We just touched a little bit on this. And last but not least, we want to thank you for joining us from PCLA. And if you liked this event and you feel that you would like to see more of them, please feel free to donate to pcla.org. Or if you need information and referral, you can reach us at info@pcla.org. And that will also get you to Sarah King, our wonderful information and referral specialist. So thank you all so much. I know I didn't follow the script, but that's okay. And I hope you got some great information from us, and we hope to see you again. Thank you all.
Bev has a question.
Oh, Beverly has a question. Should we take one more quick question? I didn't see it in here.
Oh, Bev.
Bev, where is it? Let's see.
She's speaking.
Oh, she's speaking. Okay, go ahead, Beverly.
I had a question about that seat that you use in the car that turns around and slides out. Where can you get it? What is it called?
Charles, do you know what it's called? I don't remember what it was called.
It's by the company Braun Ability, and it's called the Tourney Evo.
Turning Evo?
Tourney Evo. I'm typing it into the chat there. Braun Ability is the company, and the seat itself is called the Tourney Evo.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Any last minute thoughts anybody wants to say before we go?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Very, very helpful.
You are my people. That's what I want to say. You are my community. Love you all.
Be well. Have a good week.
Thank you so
Good night.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.